welcome back to Number One Sports. Today I'm going to be telling you what to expect when the two best teams in the country go head-to-head on the biggest stage of college basketball. The time has come. After months and months of waiting, we are finally here, the biggest stage of college basketball, where the two best teams in the country will go head-to-head and see who will win it all. Houston not only won the Big 12 tournament, but they won the regular season Big 12 as well. Florida won the SEC tournament, however, they did not win the regular season SEC. That went to Auburn. But here we are, Florida took down Auburn, and now they get their shot to win. Houston, however, sadly does not have the best Final Four record. They have been to 6 Final Fours, not winning a single one of them. So, could this be the year they redeem themselves? Let's find out. Let's first talk about how these two teams got here. So, to start off, we have Florida. After last season being very disappointing, being a 7th seed in the tournament, and then going to lose to Colorado in the first round, Florida wanted to have a bit of a better season. So, how do you do that? Well, you start off going undefeated. Not a bad start. But then, once they got to SEC play, they lost to Kentucky in their first SEC game, and their undefeated record didn't last very long. But Kentucky is a good team, SEC is a tough conference. So, they went through SEC play, beating Tennessee, Auburn, Mississippi State, Texas A&M, Alabama, and Ole Miss. All great wins. And that got them the 2 seed in the SEC tournament. In the SEC tournament, they beat 7 seed Missouri, 3 seed Alabama, and 4 seed Tennessee. Tennessee did beat Auburn in the semifinals, and if I was Florida, I would be very happy about that, because I think Auburn was a much tougher team, and as you know, Florida did beat them yesterday in the Final Four, so beating a team 3 times in the SEC would be very challenging. So I think Florida did have a bit of an easy path, of course on Alabama, but they did not play their best game, so this is how Florida got the 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. Now it was Florida's time to redeem themselves from the previous year. I know a 1-16 matchup is a lot easier than a 7-10 matchup, but we have seen 16 seeds beat 1 seeds before, but unfortunately for Norfolk State, that did not happen this year, and Florida handled them quite easily. Then, Florida got a second-round matchup against possibly Hall of Fame coach Dan Hurley and 2-time national champions UConn. And Florida almost lost this game. I said before that UConn would want to defend their title, not that they had a great chance of winning, but they knew that Florida was a top contender, and they said, you want it, you come take it from us. And UConn had the game won, but for the first time out of twice in this tournament, Florida barely survived. Then they went in the Sweet 16 against 4 seed Maryland, the Crab 5 against one of the deepest benches in college basketball. Take a guess who won that one. I'll tell you, the deep bench. I've been riding high on the Crab 5 all year. They were great, and now they're gone. Derek Queen's going to the draft, and their 2 guards are both going to the transfer portal. But it was nice while it lasted, and unfortunately, they lost to Florida. And that was unfortunate for me, because now Tech, after barely beating Arkansas, had to go and face Florida in the Elite 8. I would have much rather played Maryland, but it is what it is. And this is the second time in the tournament that Florida had themselves beat. Texas Tech had a 9-point lead with 3 minutes left. Florida was done for. Tech was going to San Antonio, but everybody was wrong. Florida rallied, and as our coach, Grant McCasland, would say, the toughest team won. Florida came out on top by 5. So then Florida goes to the Final Four to face a familiar foe, Auburn, who they had already beaten once that season. So Florida takes down Auburn, defies all odds, and goes to the national championship, and now here we are, Florida taking on Houston. As for Houston, they have had nothing short of an amazing year. Even though they had a slow start to the season with losses against Auburn, Alabama, and San Diego State, here they are playing for the national title. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. In the Big 12, they had key wins against Texas Tech, Arizona, Iowa State, Kansas, Baylor, and BYU. Just like Florida, all amazing wins. However, unlike Florida, they not only won the Big 12 regular season, but they also got a 1 seed in the Big 12 tournament. In the Big 12 tournament, they beat 16 seed Colorado, 4 seed BYU, and 3 seed Arizona. In my personal opinion, I think that should have been 2 seed Texas Tech in the championship. I'm not biased, but I do think Houston and Tech were the 2 best teams in the Big 12. but unfortunately for Tech, we were not fully healthy and we lost to Arizona. But lucky for Houston, they did not have to play us again, and I know they did beat us earlier in the season, but we also beat them, and both times we were not fully healthy. Okay, I'm done talking about Texas Tech. This is about Houston. So, in the tournament, they got a 1 seed with a first-round matchup against 16 seed SIU Edwardsville. As you can imagine, Houston handled them fairly easily to go to a second-round matchup against Gonzaga. Houston had this in the bag most of the game. Then Gonzaga did fight for a little bit at the end of the game, and they almost came back and won, but it wasn't enough. Then, maybe one of my favorite games in this whole tournament was Houston against Purdue. This was an amazing game to watch and a very tough game for Houston. Not only because they lost by 2, but because it was basically a home game for Purdue, with it being in Indiana. And the refs were a little biased, but that didn't matter because Houston came out on top. Then, something I was not expecting whatsoever was Houston to beat Tennessee by 20 in the Elite Eight to punch their ticket to San Antonio for a Final Four game against Duke. Then, this was definitely my favorite game of the tournament, Duke against Houston last night in the Final Four. I know it was not a great game for most of it, with Houston being down by 15 in the second half. Not only did they complete the largest comeback in Final Four history, but they get to play Florida in the national championship. Now let's talk about the actual game. As you heard me say, both teams have had amazing seasons, and I think this will be an amazing game. I know I said in my previous video that I thought whoever won Duke and Houston would win the national championship, but that opinion may have changed. Houston did struggle quite a bit last night, and Florida, they were down a lot against Auburn for part of the game, but they came out on top and they looked like an amazing team. I'm not saying that Houston isn't an amazing team, but I think Florida has been playing better lately. However, Houston might be an unstoppable force. I know that sounds a bit weird considering they struggled with Duke last night, but hear me out. J'Wan Roberts is not the best player in college basketball, but he is the best teammate I've ever seen. Not only that, he is Houston's leader. Florida doesn't really have someone like that. I guess you could argue it's Walter Clayton Jr., but he is nothing close to J'Wan Roberts. However, I think that Florida is the more skilled team here. They have better bigs, and they arguably have better shooters. That's kind of up to you. They do have Walter Clayton, and I don't think Houston has someone like that. But I also do think that Houston is better coached. And for those reasons, I think the 2025 March Madness national champion is going to be the Houston Cougars. I know that Florida has had probably a bit of a better tournament than Houston, but Houston has had an amazing season, and I think they're going to take down the Gators and win their first ever national championship. Congrats, Houston. I hope you all win. Thank you so much for watching. I have had a blast making these videos, and I'm not done yet. So don't forget to like and subscribe and continue to watch for more updates.